Yes, so what we would like to do...
I couldn't ask the question before, can I ask it now?
Well, it's an issue of time for those people who are going to be leaving today as to what we discuss. So I'd like to hear the topic you're asking about first, probably, and then make a decision. Is that all right?
Yes, it was in continuity with what was shared this morning about spirits.
Yep.
So actually I don't see them, but I feel them.
Yep.
And sometimes there's a feeling of being invaded.
Yep.
And I would like to know how you would deal with this. And especially, for example, there was an example last night. I had to sleep in a dormitory with 8 beings. I started feeling all these energies and I felt really invaded, and suddenly one being became very disrespectful, making so much noise when 4 of them were already sleeping, whatever. Anger came and angry thoughts, so I could see. So now I'm not so sure if... First question, this feeling of being invaded sometimes, and so childishly I ask, please leave my bodies. Sometimes I call for Christ's light. I just, what would you say?
We know that many of you do have a lot of interference in your life from spirits. We'd probably like to talk about those issues tomorrow rather than today, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
Because I'd really like to focus on sort of at least talking about the standards of love in some practical areas, because I feel unless we have the discussion about some practical areas, you won't really understand the principles of what we're talking about. So
why don't we devote tomorrow to like
spirit
spirits,
stuff,
mediumship, all things spirit.
Yeah, all things spirit.
Yeah.
We'll do tomorrow.
Spirit related. Yeah.
And today we want to focus on more to do with, principles relating to God's standard of love versus human standards of love. But that being said, some of your relationships have been set up by spirits. So obviously that's going to sort of hook into God's standard of love versus human standards of love a bit as well. So we'll see what we can do in terms of dealing with that issue as well. But if we can focus our attention on standards of love first, and comparing standards of love in a few different areas. And what we thought was, rather than us coming up with some examples, whether you wanted to bring some examples of like, oh, here's a relationship issue, or here's a physical thing that come up in my life, where does the standard of love apply there?
How do you feel about that?
How do you feel about that? Can you think of any?
Yeah.
All right, well, so who'd like to start? So Tim, you want to start?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So here we're talking about something that's come up practically in your life that where if a standard of love was applied, God's standard of love was applied, what would have happened?
So I've been in a relationship for the past 1.5 years.
Yep.
And I felt in the beginning I was being more and more open and growing a bit, and I felt better about my life. And since then, since the relationship started, I felt more and more suppressed, and I didn't want to do stuff anymore. I wasn't open.
So you're saying that you began a relationship?
Yes.
So let's look at relationships, right?
Yeah.
Right, so you say before you began a relationship, you felt fairly connected with yourself. You felt like you were growing. You felt like you were
more than I've ever had.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then when you began the relationship, you started to shut down and feel suppressed and
Yes.
stop growing.
And it was also often that we would fight, like almost every time we would see each other, we would fight. And then afterwards, I would be just really suppressed, and I would just spend my time on YouTube, like hours, days. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A lot of men also do gaming and other things, to detune. Fishing, popular one in Australia. Like can't handle my life at home, so I'm going fishing. Popular one. I suppose in some countries it's hunting. Like off we go hunting, rifle on back, and off we go. Get away from the the relationship, you know, is really. So this is like how we fight even is interesting, isn't it? How we have disagreements in a relationship, and also the kind of things we do. So, you know, in relationships we do have fights, and like you say, there are we purposefully go into places of distraction.
Yes.
don't we? Distraction. And it's interesting as to why we do such things. But of course we got to apply it to God's standards of love. So we probably want to look at some aspects of a relationship, and if we had God's standards of love, what we would do, versus if we don't have God's standards of love, what do we do? Yeah? Okay. So is everyone okay with that subject? Yeah. How many of you are still in a relationship right now? Right. So probably half. Is that about right?
Yeah, it looks to be about half.
Yeah, we find it's interesting. In most audiences, we find it's about half, don't we? Mm-hmm. Which surprises us to a degree. But obviously, there's a reason why it's half, isn't there? Because it's very tempting. And what we notice here too, by the way, you've got a great big girls' club, haven't you? Here as well. Yeah, girls' club. You know, like.
Well, Yvette's got a girls' club.
Yvette's got a girls' club. Well, yeah, but many of you are
in also other girls'
clubs.
Yeah.
And we also noticed yesterday that many of the girls' club spirits.
The spirits were very intense yesterday.
Were very intense with me yesterday.
And me.
And Mary too. They were trying to tell Mary, speak up more, shut him up. And then with me, why can't you just shut up and let her speak?
Yeah, they don't like it when a man has a lot to say. And the woman lets him say it.
Yeah. The more that happens, the more I speak.
And the more I shut up, actually. Did you see how quiet I was yesterday? I was like, no, I'm not playing your game.
The more it happens, Mary the more she shuts up. Yeah. So that's the way it goes. Yeah, relationships. I must say right from the beginning with relationships. Oh, I've got to erase them. Relationships can be one of the highest sources of joy in your life, can't they? But they can also be one of the highest sources of pain in your life as well. And of course, whether they're joy or pain is going to very much depend upon what standard of love you apply to them. Yeah. So, relationships. First principle of a relationship. If you apply your own standards to the relationship will most probably fail. First rule of a relationship. If you apply your own standards of love to a relationship, the relationship will most probably fail. If it doesn't fail, it's just going to be very bad. Right? And that's because the human standards of relationships are very, very poor. And fundamentally, they're on earth, most relationships are based upon a barter system. Now, I know many of you feel that a barter system is better than a financial system.
What's barter?
Barter, it's like, I give you something, you give me something. I give you something. Exchange. Like, I give you what you want, you give me what I want. Barter system. And most people on earth believe barter system is better than a financial system where you pay for a service. So in other words, visiting a prostitute is worse than having a marriage. That's the standard, I'm saying, the world has. Visiting a prostitute. But visiting a prostitute is a transaction, isn't it? A transaction between two people who actually know what they're doing, for the most part. One's going to a prostitute, the other one's being a prostitute. One's getting paid for the service. It's a transaction, a financial transaction that obviously is also sexual in nature, right? And I'm not saying you should do it. I'm saying it's clear delineation of what's really going on. Unfortunately, in marriages, because we're married, often the transactions become very unclear, but they're still a transactional system, right? So they're not often very much different than visiting a prostitute.
So if we extend that, it's like, would the prostitute have sex with the person who's coming if they weren't getting paid? Probably not. in a marriage, would one party have sex with the other if they weren't getting something else in return? In most marriages, they wouldn't. You know.
An example of that. If a woman wants her financial fears to be gone away, she wants a provider, and she wants to have children. She knows she doesn't want to bring up the children by herself, but she's desperate to have children, but she knows she doesn't want to bring up the children by herself, and also doesn't want to go to work and have children because that's like busy, isn't it? Any of you have done that, you know that's busy, right? Having 2 or 3 children under the age of 5, let's say, as well as working, that's pretty tough, right? So what do you need? You need somebody else doing it with you. Isn't that right? Right. Now, if your need is to have a child, isn't that already beginning of a barter? It is, isn't it? Yep. And then as soon as you need to have a child, you're also going to need some level of, nowadays in the world, some level of financial security. You're also going to need sperm. But someone to impregnate you, right? Unless you're going to do it the expensive way, the cheap way. There's a cheap way, isn't there? That's have sex, and the expensive way is lots of like artificial procedures, which are often painful and difficult
and expensive.
So most people go for the cheap way. So the cheap way is to find a guy who's going to impregnate you, and also potentially provide some financial security along the way, where he also wants to have children and he wants to get sort of the same things. Well, that's a barter, isn't it? Yep. It's not God's standard of love, because God's standard of love is gifts, not barters. So a barter is an exchange. I want something, you want something, I give you what you want, you give me what I want. That's a bartering system. Gift is I give you what you want.
I'm drawn by my desire to give to you.
And that's it.
That's it. And then if you have a mutual desire to give to me, we're in a relationship.
Yeah, but if I don't, then we might not be. I might just want to receive the gift and thanks. That's it. Right? And most people think that's unfair. Right? In other words, we think a bartering system is fair. We think a bartering system is, should we use the term, justice. Just. Yep. So in relationships, many of us are focused on justice. That makes sense to you, Tim?
Yeah.
Can I answer your question? So when you're in a relationship, one of the major causes of fighting is the feeling that there's a lack of justice. I'm doing things for her, or she's doing things for me. One of us feels like the other one's not doing enough. Lack of justice. I once visited a psychologist. This is way before I began to know who I was or anything else. I was in my early 30s, trying to work out what is I just visited for not necessarily for myself. It was more, I wanted to work out what was the right way to have a relationship. So I went and saw some psychologists, see what they thought, right? So I paid for them to tell me what they thought. One guy said, a relationship is only about justice. It's not about love. It's about justice. If you got 2 people, he said, in a relationship, and as long as they feel that there is justice, they will stay together. They won't stay together for any other reason, he said. And in his experience, he was 51 years old at the time. I was 30. He was 51. He said in his experience, in his entire life of he'd been a psychologist for 29 years, I think he said. He's never met a relationship where they broke up for any other reason than justice. It's a sad indictment on relationships, but it's probably true. Because once we feel injustice in a relationship, that's when we want to fight. Isn't it? That's when you want to go, You're not giving me what I want, Mary. Either I'm out the door or you're out the door.
Or really the fight is trying to bully me into giving you what you
what
want.
I want, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the methods I then use to bully Mary to give me what I want is bribery. What can I give you as long as you're going to give me what I want? That's a bribery, right? Blackmail. If you don't give me what I want,
I'm going to make you feel very bad about yourself.
yep,
Yep.
that's blackmail. Then there's punishment. You didn't give me what I want. So now you're not getting what you want.
Yeah.
Punishment, right? Now, all of these methods are human standards of justice, but then none of them are love. They're actually very dangerous to a relationship. They can end up in violence, and this is why one of the big epidemics on the planet is men's violence against women, right? And this is one of the reasons for it, because the man is going, it's not just, not just. Now, our internal sense of justice is absolutely flawed, like, for the most part. Because if let's say I've been brought up by a mother who thinks I'm the bee's, like, she thinks I'm cool, she thinks I'm the best man in the world. She created me, of course I am, right? The best man in the world. She thinks that I'm better than my father. She thinks that I'm better than most other men. She also thinks that whatever I do with women doesn't matter as long as I don't do it to her. Right? She thinks that too. Like, and not only that, she'll watch me doing things to women, damaging them, and she'll be proud of me because she's still got a good relationship with me. Oof. Right? Now, the average man on the planet, many men on the planet are in this situation where mums had that with them. By the way, many daughters on the planet have had the same thing with their fathers. So I'm not saying it's just one gender. So now, let's say I'm one of these guys. I'm one of these guys who've been nursed and coddled by my mother all my life. And I've been taught to believe I'm better than my dad. Therefore, by default, I'm better than any other man, because my mum thinks I'm better than any other man. And I'm also taught by my mother that I don't really have to look after myself because she really wants to look after me. She'll cook for me. She'll clean for me. I can stay in her house until I'm 30 and she'll still keep cooking for me and cleaning for me. I know people that have stayed at home men that have stayed at home until they're 50 and mum is still making them lunch, doing all their washing, all their ironing. I know men that have owned 3 or 4 houses and they still live at home with their mother. Right? For this that's an extreme, right? But anyway, I'm this man. How am I Mary thinks I'm pretty hot because I think I'm pretty hot.
Yep. Because this happens.
This happens a lot, right? If the man thinks he's pretty hot, then the woman thinks, oh, maybe he is, because he thinks he is.
And what would I know? I'm just a woman.
Maybe he is, right?
Maybe he thinks he's great and he projects this whole idea that he's going to take care of everything and is wonderful. Oh, I think I want to be with him.
So we enter a relationship. Yep. But in a very short period of time, she realises that I'm not in a relationship with her other than for sex, really, for the most part.
And mothering.
And perhaps to give her a child, from her perspective. And perhaps to give her some security. But if I'm this kind of guy, I can't create security. My mum does it for me. Right?
I talk a good game, but not a lot of action.
Not a lot of action, right? So my mum does it for me. So I'm in this state, obviously a very unloving state, not God's standard love, but I think it's love. This guy who's been brought up this way thinks a woman doing these things is love.
And also, if I have a problem, it's obviously my problem, because Mum says you're okay.
Mum says I'm okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean there's a problem? My mum's a woman and she thinks I'm great. You know what I mean? So obviously this is going to cause major trouble, isn't it? Now, of course, flip side, let's say Mary's had the same thing with her father. Right?
So I think I'm the epitome of all women. I'm perfectly loving. Daddy told me all the time I can do no wrong. And actually,
and fundamentally, I've got a soulmate relationship with my mother, which is really emotionally incestuous, really. And Mary, in those circumstances, would have a soulmate relationship with her father, which is also emotionally incestuous, really. Right?
it's actually quite abusive on the part of the parents.
Very.
Because
very.
they're using their children to avoid.
So one of the things in
their own
relationships
marriage.
we need to talk about is parenting, obviously, right? And all of you are going to get triggered about that one. Right? Yeah. So let's here we are trying to have a relationship, right? And God's standard of love is what? Is this a relationship or is this a bartering system? It's a bartering system. It's not a relationship. And as long as there is justice in my mind,
As long as
only in my mind, it's not God's version of justice or anything like that, it's my version of justice. As long as it's my version of justice, we'll get along fine.
which is often the version of justice is, I'll put up with your stuff as long as you give me that thing that I want.
And
that
put up with
Daddy
my stuff.
gave. Yeah, that Daddy gave me, and then you've got to put up with my stuff, and I'll give you that thing that Mummy gave you.
And we're great. We lived together 30 years like that.
Yeah.
It's not a relationship the entire time. What it is a bartering system. It's not based on love. It's not based on gifts. It's based on demands. So it's not a love. It's not love. God's standard is way above that for human relationships. God's standard is, I decide I want to give a gift to Mary. That's it.
And that you desire me not for what I'm going to give to you, but for the personality and nature that God created in me.
Yep. And I
my
want you to be you.
expression
I
of
want you to be your
character,
person, your character, your nature.
my free will.
I want Mary to have a justice fulfilled life is what I would want for myself. I want, if she wants to have children, I'll probably try to help her have children, but only if I want them. Not if I don't want them. Look, how many men, I know for myself, when I've had 2 children in a past relationship, I didn't care one way or the other about having children. I only had children because my wife decided she wanted children. Right? Now, what happened was she got severely depressed soon after she had children because she realised her ideal about having children was not how it turned out. It was hard work. And what ended up happening is that she absconded from the relationship in the sense of like didn't want to be present anymore, got depressed and angry, and I finished up caring for both the children. But for the majority of our relationship, I was the one who cared for both of them. Right? And the only time she did was when she was not depressed and not angry. Right? And this is common, but did I really want to have children? Well, for me, it didn't worry me one way or the other. So I was fine with it. And actually, I learnt a lot through it. I learnt a lot about love through it. So I actually am very grateful I did do it. But it wasn't like this burning need to have a child like my wife had. Many of you ladies can connect to that burning need to have a child. Yeah, that's out of harmony with God's love. There's something wrong there. Right? And maybe one thing we need to talk about. But here I am, Mary and I are in this relationship. I've got all these expectations, really, aren't they? Demands, yeah. And
So have I.
And Mary's got all these expectations, demands. And while I meet her demands and Mary meets mine, we're going along smoothingly.
Smoothingly.
Well, not quite smooth,
Yeah.
is it? It's never quite that smooth. But we'll probably think we're in love with each other and we really love the other person. Sometimes, like I'm a bit of a romantic, right? So I watch these love stories, like I read books, love story books. Mary sort of thinks, when you first met me, you thought I was a bit corny, didn't you?
Yeah.
But I watch a love story movie 20 times, So I'm watching these stories and I'm going, the only reason why these two are together is because they say things like, he completes me.
I feel so safe when I'm
I
with
feel
you.
so safe when I'm with you. You make me feel so good about myself. Okay, oh God. This is not God's standard of love. This is what humans believe love to be, but it's not love. It's addiction being met, is what it is. So here I am getting these addictions met. Now, you can see the relationship is only going to last as long as we stay in that condition, that soul condition, where we believe this is what love is. As soon as one of us learns anything else about life, and we start realising, and obviously it's going to be a simple way of learning, because I'm going to strew all my clothes around, I'm going to wait for Mary to cook my dinner, because this is what my mum does, right? My mum cooks my dinner for me, so I go from my mum to my partner. She's going to cook my dinner for me. She's going to do my washing and my ironing and pick up my dirty underwear and laundry it for me. Clean the toilet after I've been in it. I don't do that. My mum does that, right? So really what's happened is my mum has made me an incapable man. Is really what's happened. And then I think I'm perfectly capable because she's told me I am. So I can't even be told I'm an incapable man by anybody. A male tells me, and I'm in competition with him because he's like my dad, he's nasty and he doesn't look after me. And my mum's told me I'm great, so how can you? Mary tries to tell me, you're useless. If she was really blunt and honest, she would have to say that, wouldn't she? You don't do anything for yourself. You expect me to do everything for you. You expect me to be your mother at the same time as have sex with you. And that's pretty unsexy, right? That's not cool, right? Like, so, and if Mary was honest, she'd be saying these things to me. Now, of course, in my state, I'm going to be going,
how dare you?
My mother thinks I'm fine. Why do you think I'm not, right? So we're in a fight now, and we're in a fight fundamentally because I or Mary don't have God's standards of love. That's the reason why we're in a fight. We're in a fight because what I think is just is not just for Mary. And what Mary thinks is just is not just for me. And that's because we're focused on justice in our relationship, which is really barter, and we're not really having a relationship because a relationship should be based upon gifts, presents.
No, I don't have presents.
Yeah, no, it's good. Gifts or presents, right? I want to give Mary a gift. My love, but also my time, my energy, my effort, my creativity, my artistic, my music, my whatever. I want to give them to Mary. I don't need her to accept them. I just want to give them. And if she says, I don't like that gift, I won't give it anymore. Right? That's me upholding a proper sense of love from my perspective. And from God's, by the way. What Mary does with that, I don't have any control over. Let's say Mary goes, I like you giving that, and that, but I just don't want to have sex with you. If I love her, that won't bother me. Of course, I might have to raise some things of, why don't you want to have sex with me? Won't I? Out of honesty, because that seems pretty strange. If you really... In a relationship and you really enjoy the other person and you want to enjoy their body and you want, everything, it's really strange that the other person doesn't want to enjoy yours. So that's quite strange. There's something wrong there, right? So we'd have to address that. We'd have to talk about it. And if Mary decided she didn't want to resolve it, then I'd have to say, well, we're not in a sexual relationship, right? So how long are we going to stay in this state, not having a sexual relationship? Now, for me, I'm probably willing to stay there for 5 years or something, not having a sexual relationship, while still having a relationship. But during that time, I would raise the issues of why isn't there any sexual attraction, or why is it not occurring, right? But I'm not going to get angry that it's not occurring. But we do have to talk about it because obviously it's a problem. there's a lack of attraction, and if there's a lack of attraction, that doesn't make any sense because God designed the two soul halves to be attracted to each other. And this is going to be quite confronting, right? God designed only the two soul halves to be attracted to each other and no one else. So actually God's standard of love with a relationship is you have a relationship with your soulmate. And that's it. There's no one else.
Not with my mom.
Not with your mum. Yeah. Not with your mum.
Are you relating to this example, Tim? How does your situation compare?
I'm not saying this is your problem.
No. I think we often have conflict where she will want me to be, she wants more from me, where she will want more from me, and I will
step away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that often leads to
Conflict with your mum. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about my girlfriend.
No, just a joke.
Yeah.
To withdraw to your mum, is that what you're saying here? Because what you really described was two issues, wasn't it? There's conflict in your relationship.
Which was the fighting, right?
The fighting.
Yes.
But then there's what you
then
do.
Then there's the shutdown.
The shutdown. And you're sort of linking the two together. But they're actually two separate problems.
It's like I'm blaming her for the shutdown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, your shutdown is your choice. It's sort of like, let's say Mary decides that she doesn't really want to be intimate with me much. Now, that is a choice for Mary to shut herself down. Obviously, she would be making the reason for her shutting herself down has to be identified. And it's better for two people to help each other identify it than it is for one person to have to do it by themselves, isn't it? But what we see happens mostly in relationship is the person defends their shutdown.
Yeah.
So in other words, they're not interested in solving why they shut down. They're interested in keeping the shutdown going. They're not interested in resolving their problems. They're interested in them continuing. Right? Now, if Mary is shutting down because, let's say it's a sexual shutdown. Let's say for me, if I'm shutting down because I feel like Mary doesn't want me sexually, and that I feel like she doesn't really lust after me, and therefore it feels bad for me, let's say, and then I decide to step away from her, in other words, shut down myself. I decided to shut down. Or it could be Mary might be, because of her relationship with Dad, she might be overbearing with me. You know, she might be bossing me around all the time, telling me what to do all the time. Yeah. And so I then decide to then step away so that I don't have to deal with that. So I start doing things like playing video games or going fishing or, you know, just trying to distract myself from the fact that there is this pain developing in the relationship that I'm not prepared to address or deal with. Now, that's not God's standard. God's standard is as soon as there is a problem, you deal with it. As soon as it happens.
In yourself?
In yourself and in the other
and
person.
With your partner.
And you don't stop dealing with it until it's dealt with. Right?
So you really need to understand in your situation, is my partner got a loving standard when they're requesting something, or do I feel that no, their standard is actually taking or overbearing? So you need to figure that out with God, don't you? And then you're going to have feelings to feel in either direction, aren't you? And actions you're going to take lovingly to address the situation. Yeah.
Now, if I'm a mummy's boy's man, which I would call a mummy boy, because you haven't grown up yet, right, if you're like that. So Pierre's mummy boy man, right, and you're still a boy, frankly, you know. And I say that to Pierre because I know him well, and he can sort of take it from me. Whereas many of you other men, I could say it, you'd be totally offended and we'd walk out the door and we'd never see you again. I know with Pierre, I'll probably see him again. so
even if he's severely challenged.
Even if he's severely challenged by the statement. Yeah. But the problem with a mummy's boy's boy is they stay a boy all of their life on earth and never learn to, you know, to grow up and be a man. And usually the only time they start to go through any grief associated with that is when their mum dies. And then they go through some stuff, feelings usually, that start to change their behaviour. But if I'm the mummy's boy's boy and I am doing these things to Mary, can you see? Surely her feelings about me are going to build, aren't they, about the resentment of the lack of justice, if all she's focused on is justice. So if all she's focused on is justice in a relationship, in other words, a bartering system in the relationship, then what she's going to do is she's going to start feeling incensed, angry, that I am basically doing a whole heap of things with a lack of consideration of her, right? Then she could choose to do a number of things, couldn't she? She could choose to get angry, right? Shut down completely. And usually what happens for a woman is the very first thing she does is shut down sexually. And then she slowly steps away even further and further until the point where she shuts down emotionally. And once she shuts down emotionally, that's the end of it. You're pretty much done after that. Because as soon as she shuts down emotionally, she's no longer even connected to the fact that connected to you as emotionally, not desirous of you in an emotional way. And as soon as that happens, you're pretty much gone. You're done. And that you could say, if she had the desire for justice, she would probably do those things. But if she had a desire to give a gift, what would she do? It's a good question, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If love is about gifts, and she really loved me, and I'm this really like mummy's boy demanding, I want to get what I want when I want it in the relationship and so forth, and I do this all the time, right? Obviously she's got a choice to either get angry about the injustice or to continue to love me. But what would she do if she was loving me?
She would address it.
What would she do first?
How would she address it?
She would call me out when I'm doing something.
Well, first she would make the statement that what I'm doing is unloving. It's not God's standard of love, what I'm doing.
Wait, hang on, I want to go back. If she's this woman who's entered this relationship in a barter, and then she comes out of that band that Jesus talked about yesterday, and she's like, oh, hang on, I don't want to barter anymore. Then the very first thing I would have to address is all of my addictions to the barter. And that would be a personal process of like, wow, this guy's really annoying me, but why did I marry him? Because I want security. Shit, I really want security. I'm terrified if I don't have that. How am I going to create my own security? Oh my God, I would have to feel a lot of those things, wouldn't I, first?
Yeah. She can't really help me until she feels those things.
No, because otherwise I'm always going to be sort of seeking that from him anyway. And I'll let the discussion go as far as I think,
and
well, then he might...
me, you'll seek it from the next relationship.
I'll have an affair, or I'll leave him, or I'll run back to daddy, or I'll try to raise things, but as soon as I feel like, oh, he's getting very challenged now and he might leave, I'll back off, because I want my security still. Yeah. So I'd have to deal with my issues first, to the point where I'm willing to feel what I might feel. Like I might not be through it, but I'm willing to...
But even to the point where you're willing to risk the relationship altogether.
That's right. I'm willing to feel whatever comes up, even if when I raise it, he might leave. Yeah.
Yep. So that would have to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I would raise, or in that process, I would be raising things with him and saying, hey, there's a lot of problems here with the way you're not a self-responsible person.
Yeah. Now, I can choose to do a couple of things now, can't I? I can be responsible and start looking at myself and start wanting God's standard of love and start working on myself in that regard and start looking at my own addictions. My relationship with my mother needs to be addressed. I need to cut the sort of soulmate connection with my mother, really, is what I need to cut. And my mum's going to go ballistic about that. She's going to get really upset. She created it. She wants it, right? So she's going to get upset about that as well. So I'm going to have to endure the, distance from my mother and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to have to work through all of that in order to change this in myself. I'm going to have to do all of that. And if I do all of that, can you see, if Mary's done her thing about wanting to get closer to love, and then I realise, and I'm in a bad space too, and I start to do it, I'm humble enough to do that. can you see our relationship is now going to be more and more based upon gifts, isn't it? And it's likely, because it's more based upon gifts, and we also now have a set of principles or standards that are above our own to work towards, it's highly likely that we'll start working through issues. And highly likely, as a result of working through those issues, become happier. Right? Eventually we'll get to the point where we start to feel the character, the nature, the personality of the other, because we're allowing them to be their real selves. And eventually I will start to feel Mary's real self, and Mary will start to feel my real self. And then I'll have some questions to answer. One of those questions is Mary's real self the same as my real self? Because if it is, we're soulmates. But if it's not, we're not. And I need to then go off and find my soulmate if it's not. But if it is, now I can say, this is going to be not just a relationship now, but it's actually going to be forever, this relationship. And we can continue developing in the same way forever. Right? Till we are one with each other. When I say one, her thoughts, my thoughts. Her feelings, my feelings. My feelings, her feelings. My thoughts, her thoughts. No difference in those things. That's one. Our beliefs the same. Right? We are one individual. God created us to be one individual, the two halves, one individual. And this is a part of me growing towards that. But can you see, if I'm in a relationship and I don't know that, whether she's my soulmate or not, can you see the only way I'm going to know is that if Mary is allowed to develop herself completely, emotionally, her nature and her personality, and be herself, and I'm allowed to do the same, and we also are working towards this standard of love, which is God's standard of love, can you see eventually I'm going to sort that out? I'm going to eventually find out, she is the same as me, or I'm going to find out she isn't. And my soulmate's out there somewhere. And by that stage, I'll be in such a good condition of love that even our breakup will be painless. When I say painless, I won't be angry with her, she won't be angry with me, I won't be feeling like I've got to attack her, or feeling like I've got to take away 3/4 of the finances and leave her with 1/4, or any of that. We will come to a loving dissolution of the relationship because my soulmate's out there somewhere and Mary's soulmate's out there somewhere, and we both want to go and find that person. Right? But the alternative is that we are soulmates, and the more and more we engage our own nature and personality, each of us, the more and more we realise that it's the same as each other. The more and more we'll end up having the same thoughts, the more and more we'll end up having the same feelings, the more and more we'll end up having the same desires, the same passions for our future. More and more that will occur, and the more that occurs, the more it binds us closer together, and we become and you do become one soul, one thought, one motive, one action, one desire. Yeah. Expressed, feminine, masculine expression, but one. Yeah. So that is the option if we're loving. If we're unloving, what happens is we go, you're not tidying up after me, you don't clean up after me, you're not doing the things anymore, I feel like you don't love me anymore, so I'm off. Oh, who else is really attractive? Oh, she's attractive. I'll go there. Pursue her till I get her. I tell her how great I am because my mother told me I'm great. She then believes I'm great. Same thing. Off we go. Same relationship I had here. And now she's cooking and cleaning and washing up after me. And do you know what I mean? Right? No change. And Mary might go, gee, I don't want one of those men who I have to cook after and clean up after and blah, blah, blah. That's like, I've already had one of him and I don't want another, So she might go, I want a man who just knows how to look after himself. I don't have to cook for him. I don't have to clean for him. I don't have to do anything for him. We basically just
Cohabit.
cohabit and have sex.
Yeah.
And
He lets me do whatever
he lets
I
me
want.
do whatever I want, right? And there's really rough terms about that in the world, isn't there? Like the woman has total control now, right, for the relationship. But of course, if a woman gets total control of the relationship without it being based on love, then she's not going to respect the man at all, is he? She's not going to respect him. She's not going to care about him except for what she's getting. So now he's like following her around like a lamb, and she's going, and she says, tidy up after yourself. So tidies up after himself, and she says, cook the dinner. And I cook the dinner, and but is that love? Is she wanting to give gifts? She's angry, right? She doesn't want to give gifts, so that wouldn't be a good result either, would it? Can you see? So what happens with a lot of people, they have one kind of relationship which is like swinging the pendulum. One kind of relationship is like, I had to look after the guy and I'm sick of that. Chunk. He does everything for me. Right? And he never complains about it.
And I get to take out all my pent-up rage from the last guy on this
On
guy.
him as well. And he's okay with that because he loves him so much. Right? And this is what often happens in relationships where one goes one to the other to the other. And then after you've done one to the other a few times and found it to be very unsatisfying, what is the net result?
The other half of the audience.
No relationship.
No more.
None.
Yes.
I'm sick of the whole idea of a relationship. I just have my girlfriends or my mates and we go off fishing or we go off, watching romantic movies or whatever. and imagine this ideal guy, in the movie as my partner, but of course, he's probably just as bad as all the other guys I've had anyway. And you end up either completely alone, but with a whole girl group or a boy group, is what you end up, or you end up with a very dissatisfying relationship where both of you are in total compromise all the time, or you end up swinging from one kind of relationship to another kind of relationship all through your life.
Or you start the whole process again with your own kids. So you live
In other
with
words, you
your
enter
kids
an addictive, emotionally incestuous relationship with your children to satisfy what you're not getting from your partner.
And some people do all of it. You swing between all those options.
We usually try every one of those options, is the general pattern of events of a person's life, because we don't have God's standard. Yeah. Simple reason why. Yeah. You want to ask, Maxine?
Yeah, just want some clarity, and might have others as well. With Pierre and I was attracted to him sexually, and he wasn't to me, and still isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the story we told ourselves was from some information we'd interpreted that you spoke about, where soulmates might not be attracted straight away. I just wondered if you could unravel that, because I've gone from relationships where there's been that instant attraction, that chakra thing that we all know is yucky now, and then I've landed up with one
based on addiction, that is.
But yeah, totally based on addiction.
But let's look at the beginning of your relationship. How did it begin?
I approached Pierre when I saw him on the video interviews
Why?
he did. I thought I'd challenge my gender, that stuff, because I was on my own.
Yeah, so basically you forced him into a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we became friends, and then we met. Anyway, yeah. I did. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you force someone into a relationship, what's their response generally going to be?
It's not very nice.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, Pierre has some fairly substantial sexual injuries. Like a few weeks ago in Belgium, you were projecting at 14-year-olds sexually when you were talking to them, right? So that's pretty substantial sexual injury there, right? So you're attracted to young, good-looking girls because you're a boy, not a man yet. That's why you're attracted to young, good-looking girls, right? But you need to work through that. You need to work through that. But you took the action of seeing someone in a video and then deciding he's for me.
Yeah, thinking, well, he's following divine truth. I told myself a whole story of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not the way to find your soulmate. The way to find your soulmate is to engage your passion, your desire, come to know your personality, your nature, and then once you do that and find your passion and nature, then you'll start to recognise yourself if you meet yourself in a male form.
And that's what I've been avoiding.
That's right.
Completely.
That's right.
Now.
And Pierre too, of course.
Yeah.
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 They're both. So the net result is going to be the relationship is already beginning flawed.
Yeah. So
how can it improve? The basis of the relationship is already flawed. Yeah. So that's different than sort of meeting your soulmate and actually knowing they're your soulmate. And the majority of you won't know until you're in the fifth sphere of your development. And to be in the fifth sphere, you've got to be in a pretty good state of love to be in that state, in the fifth sphere.
And I told myself that, like what they were talking about, I was skimming on the surface all the time with thinking I was identifying things, and just not getting over that wall of terror, and as you know, staying in this massive mothering, fixing, rescuing addiction.
So you don't need to punish yourself about all this.
No.
Do you?
That's one.
You be careful of that, because you don't need to punish yourself about all it. You just got to recognise it for the truth and go, okay, yes, I saw him, I selected him. Right? And obviously there were addictive reasons why you selected him, and why you then tried to get to know him based on that selection. Yep. And then, okay, even those actions are quite unloving, aren't they? Like when I saw Mary, I didn't select her. I saw her and I didn't even tell her.
You didn't pursue me.
I didn't pursue her?
No.
Yep. I knew who she was. Yep.
Yeah, it's such a contrast. Yeah, I mean, you told me once as well that the honeymoon period of soulmates comes towards the end, and I've watched that with you two. I've seen.
Yeah.
It's been beautiful to watch, and I can see how far now I am.
Yeah,
from
but
at
see,
the moment,
it requires dealing with a lot of the intergender emotional issues you've imbibed from your childhood before you're even able to recognise yourself, let alone your soulmate.
And that's a whole pile of crap.
Yeah, there's a whole pile of stuff there, and for most people it's pretty hard because, as I said, the love relationship is a big thing. Like it's besides your relationship with God, it's going to be the biggest thing in your entire life, right? And so it's huge. It's huge. So the injuries we have associated with it are usually also quite huge, right? And there's intergender emotional injuries with my opposite gender parent. There's emotional injuries with my same gender parent, and there's all sorts of things that formulate my facade that I need to deconstruct in order to even recognise myself in terms of what is my nature, what is my personality. You know, what are my desires? What are my passions? Am I going to live those passions and desires no matter what anybody, including my soulmate, thinks about that? Because, like, even like your soulmate might have injuries, right? And your soulmate's injuries might mean that they don't have anywhere near the same passions and desires that their soul has in their facade. They're living in their facade. And they might not have they might, when they first meet you, they might not recognise you at all. Like, now that wasn't quite what it was for Mary and myself.
But it was close.
It was close.
Yeah. I definitely had a strong opposition to you doing what we're doing, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I didn't, well, no, I probably did have an attraction to you. I did. Yeah, I definitely did. Just remembering. But my fear kicked in very much, which then interfered with a lot of things.
Yeah, so Mary had a strong attraction, fear kicked in almost immediately, and then within 3 months or something, Mary was telling me,
no attraction.
Not interested in me at all.
Yeah. And, yeah.
And I said, okay. I didn't try to convince her, didn't try to bully her, didn't try to...
You just left me.
I just left her, I left her alone completely.
You just loved her.
Yeah, and I spent 10 weeks crying. Yeah, but I didn't even tell her that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after I'd spent 10 weeks crying, I went through some emotion at the end of the 10 weeks that were actually real emotions, not the 9 weeks of
woe is me.
Woe is me. You know, it was 9 weeks of woe is me, and then 1 week of dealing with things. And I knew Mary would contact me again.
Yeah, and I did.
And she did within 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. And then it all started up again.
Yep, and then
She's attracted to me, and we start relationship again, and then Mary's gets a major fear triggered now because of identity and other things, and it's like
very hard.
Not interested.
Very hard decade, really, darling. You know, it was because of my improving, as you've seen. But yeah, those of you who can feel me or know me a bit, you know how much I love, you know, truth and everything. But it's taken humility on my part to development of humility to really embrace who we are.
And mine too. Like I can't force anything Mary to do.
Yeah, you had to be very humble.
Not. I can't convince her that she feels she's right. I don't want to convince her she's wrong. I need her to just work it out for herself that she is. I don't need to argue with her or fight with her about it. You know, so that required me, when I needed to have a cry, go off and have a cry, and not dump it all on Mary. So most of the time, Mary didn't know how I felt. I didn't tell her how I felt ever. I never said to her, I never even said to Mary, you've got to know how I feel. Ever. She doesn't have to know how I feel. She's got free will. She's allowed to ignore me completely, isn't she? Yeah.
It's so, like, our version of relationships is so messed up. It's so, you know, like...
Because of that reason.
I mean, for me, I think without having some standard from God, like, it's a house of sand. It's a house built on sand.
Yeah, well, most relationships are built on a terrible foundation. Yeah, most. Because the Barter foundation, the justice foundation, in the end, is not going to work, because the moment your injustice feelings are triggered, and they will be triggered because each one has a different set of justice, you know, a different belief about what justice is, they're going to get triggered. And as soon as they get triggered, it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah.
I think, you know, if you think back to the example yesterday afternoon where I just made a couple of comments to you guys because you were interacting in front of me, but, you know, to have a proper loving relationship by God's standard is very rewarding, but it is going to require things of you. And both of you were quite resistive to the things that I was very gently saying, hey guys, there's some things here in you.
So Mary's gentle with you, and you weren't humble.
And you both sort of
not humble.
dismissed it.
You both went defensive, not humble, yeah?
And this is what I mean. If you're going to aspire to love anyone, you're going to have to you're going to go, oh, tell me more, you know, like, oh, okay, you know, you're going to have to be willing to do some work for yourself. And most people seek a relationship to avoid their stuff, you know, because, you know, I feel better, you know.
You see it in all the love stories, like, he makes all my bad feelings go away.
I feel valued and I've been neglected and now there's someone notices
I'm not lonely.
I'm not lonely, all those things, Whereas that's always going to end badly if we're seeking out the other person to alleviate something within ourselves.
Fill the holes that we need to fill ourselves.
Yeah.
The holes you have in yourself are like vortexes of addiction. They're like whirlpools. They're like octopus sucking. Gimme. So it's not about gifts, it's about getting. Yeah. And until you address that within yourself, you're not capable of a good relationship, really. Now, you know, that does mean that most people on earth are not capable of a good relationship, you know. And unfortunately, most people on earth are also quite clueless about it. So you end up like experimenting, don't you? Like, Try him out. Try her out. Try. You know, they'll even go. A lot of people now don't even know their gender attraction. They don't even know whether their gender attraction is males or females. They don't even know. So an example is, you know, I've been drawing heterosexual couples on the board, but God has created souls that are dominantly female. In other words, dominantly female characteristics. When they separate, the two halves are female. God has also created souls that are dominantly male, and when they separate, the two halves are male. And they are the two halves are mostly masculine. Not often what you see nowadays, a feminine gay man or whatever. That's often an act, right? It's not actual. The real people who are at the soul level truly gay don't have to act it. They are it. You understand? But anyway, you have, so when the dominantly feminine soul separates into the two bodies, then obviously their attraction is going to be towards the female, the other half of their soul. That's going to be their attraction. So it'll be female attracted to female under those circumstances. Now, as a percentage, in terms, there's sort of like a bell curve, statistic analysis bell curve. I don't know if any of you remember any of that from school, maths or whatever. But basically, there's the majority of people who the majority of souls are heterosexual. When I say majority, about 90% of souls, just over 90% it is, 92% around that figure, of souls are heterosexual, and about 8% of souls are homosexual in nature. When I say homosexual, either gay female, gay male, and they will have the attraction to the same body, right? And that's the interesting thing I find on Earth is that nowadays more and more people have no idea who they're attracted to, even the gender of who they're attracted to.
I'm not 100% certain.
That's right. A lot of people have
incestuous with me, so it really messes me up.
That's right. A lot of people have no idea for lots of reasons. A lot of those reasons are childhood based. We just talked about spirit interference. Some of the reasons are spirit interference in the sexual development of a child, and that happens a lot. And there's also reasons associated with how they've been brought up, parenting, and what the parents' interactions with the children. And this interferes with the child's sexual development, and so therefore they don't come to know. But it's a big thing to not know, because it's a big part of your life. And when I say it's a big part of your life, it's the soulmate part of your life, which is as I said, if you're never interested in God, it's the biggest thing. And if you are interested in God, it'll be the second biggest thing that you've ever experienced. Right?
My family had a very lot of shame around anyone being gay. They had a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
Or they said to me once,
historically,
don't bring home a black man or homosexual.
Historically, gay people have been treated very, very badly. Very badly. It's even now, it's very rare to hear a story for a gay person who has been treated well. Very rare. Right? So, and that's very sad. There's a lot of religious persecution, political persecution, a lot of sexual persecution. A lot of gay people are fundamentally either emotionally or even physically tortured most of their life. Right? And this is why many of them struggle, and you can understand. Right?
I think the gender ideology stuff is actually, ironically, my friend who's gay said she's finding it really difficult with all the stuff that's happening with that. They're not feeling able to be themselves. Actually, they feel they've got to put on like you said, an act. It's really sad.
Yeah. Not good, because actually it's really interesting. I find we in the first century we had some gay male friends and some gay female friends. Of course, in the first century it was like you were stoned to death if you declared it. Right? So these people lived for a large part life of secrecy because they would have been stoned to death if they acknowledged it. But two of those couples are ones of the 14. Two of them, like John and his soulmate. The Apostle John is a gay man, and his soulmate. And we have another gay couple, female, who've returned to Earth as well. And they they're not known in the Bible. You know, they're not mentioned in the Bible, but and so it's pointless me saying who they are. But you know, we knew they were gay when we met them, you know, and we knew how difficult it was for them as well, and it has been difficult. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How are we going heat-wise?
It's pretty warm, isn't it?
Yeah. What is the time?
It's 12:30.
Yeah.
A bit more. What if we take a break at least?
Yeah, we need to get a bit of heat out of this room, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, which means taking the bodies out of the room.
With the wind coming.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of breeze outside, I notice either, is there?
It's a little bit.
A little bit, but
We
not
go and
coming
sit
in
under
our
there.
directions. Yeah.
It's a shame we can't take all this just under the trees because we
Well,
can
I
sit there.
think it
couldn't
would
we?
still.
Be pretty warm.
I think we would still receive it on the recording if we took it out there. If we just took the mics,
Yeah, let's try it.
because I think it might
What's the
still pick it
distance?
all up.
Yeah, because
We might be able to just sit under the trees,
That would be better.
rather than here.
Yeah.
I feel like we're back in the 1st century if we do that.
Shall we try that and just see how it works?
Yes.
Why don't we have lunch
We'll have lunch.
and then we can look at some of the technicals while lunch is happening.
We can
and
just
then,
test it out and make sure it's going to work.
and then we can
Yeah.
either stay there or come back.